Poll question today on the 2-year anniversary of his departure. Does Jim Benning get enough credit for assembling the core of Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, Miller, and Besser? Yes or no? You can vote at Sekeres and Price on Twitter and YouTube. Here he is, Tuesday regular, the former executive producer, Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast, Mr. John Shannon. How are you?
Living the dream, boys. Living the dream.
Good.
Good to hear. Good review.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You excited for this? You excited for Devils Canucks in the Hughes Bowl?
It will be fun, we've seen Brother Axe before.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm old enough to know about Brother Axe, whether there were 6 or 3 or whatever. But to me, it's such a bigger factor is how well all 3 are playing. And I think that we kind of joked as a group at the beginning of the season, suggesting that there a Hart, a Norris, and a Calder could be in order. But here we are in the first week of December, and a Hart, a Norris, and a Calder could be in order still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jack's going to have to leave the Devils to a little bit of a rally here for that to happen, but it's totally possible given his points per game.
There's enough time, Blake. There's enough time.
Yeah.
Are you surprised, Luke's? And in fact, Jack has to be better. If you look at the start the Devils have had, everybody knows they have great potential. Everybody knows what they can do, but their goaltending as a team needs to be better. Defensively, the team needs to improve, and then when you look across the Hudson, the Rangers are playing so well, and dare I say it, the Islanders, are playing as a lot better, I think, than a lot of people thought they would. And all of a sudden, the Devils might be the number 3 team in that tri-state area.
The hype around Luke Hughes wasn't quite what it was for Quinn. Are you surprised he's excelled to the point where he is so quickly in his career? I thought he'd get to a top pairing defenseman, but I thought it might take a few years of development.
Well, the fact that the Devils put him in the playoffs last year, I think told you what Tommy Fitzgerald thought about what his upside was. And the fact that they were able to move a defenseman like Damon Severson out in order to give Hughes a little more playing time, I think tells you, again, the confidence they had in Hughes. And they knew that if this team was to progress and be a fast puck-moving team, Luke Hughes had to be a part of it. So I guess my answer is yes, but we shouldn't be because the Devils aren't.
Yeah, and he's also just a Hughes. And they're all pretty damn good.
By the way, we all call them Americans, but and I know they went to Michigan. They spent a lot of time in Southern Ontario playing hockey. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Hughes worked for the Maple Leafs. They cut their teeth in the famed GTHL. Again, Toronto won't get credit for it. Not that it deserves any, but Toronto is continuing to create so many bright young hockey players through their minor hockey programs in this city.
Well, it's about time.
It's a big league.
When I was working back in Ottawa, we used to talk about, boy, if only the GTA would pick it up when it came to elite hockey player. No, it's true.
I know.
There was a time when, for a city so big and so hockey focused, there wasn't the steady stream of great players.
No, but that is when you look at John Tavares, Steven Stamkos, Connor McDavid. There is a larger group of kids that grew up in this area. Alex Pietrangelo is one of those guys too. That in the last 20 years, things have been pointed in the right direction.
Well, honestly, John, it picked up after that loss to Kazakhstan at the World Juniors and the ensuing summit or Royal Commission or whatever it was.
1998, boy.
Yeah, 1998. Exactly.
Oh, that was there's some fascinating stories about what's going on around that one too.
But that's when we got serious.
That was our pal Bob Nicholson trying to create some awareness about what was going on in the game of hockey.
That's when we got serious about skill development. We decided too systems oriented. We need to start allowing these kids to spread their wings and show their skill at minor hockey. Incidentally, since we're on the brothers question trivia, I'm sure Shannon knows. Highest scoring brother duo in NHL history.
Is it still Brent and Wayne?
It is still Brent and
Well,
Wayne.
it has to be. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
It has to be. You know, I mean,
Sedin's are second.
Does Brent have more points than Keith? Is that why do we always use Brent?
Well, I believe Brent made the NHL.
Did Keith not make the NHL? I thought he did.
I don't think he did. I don't
No?
think.
Okay.
I'm going to ask him tomorrow when I see him.
Sedin's are second for a duo because, of course, when you get into the Stastnys and the Sutters and they have multiples, you know, then it gets a little unwieldy. But as duos,
well, you remember it was Gordie Howe and his brother for the longest time.
That's
too.
right. Well, and of course it would have been Rocket and Pocket Rocket at one point too. And if anybody beats the Richard brothers in terms of Stanley Cups won, we'll have a story there.
Not possible.
Not possible in today's.
The pool of talent back in the day sort of made it a little bit more believable. John, you know how tough it is to make it to the NHL. It's a fraction of a percentage point to the odds. It's crazy that brothers can do it, actually. You know, like it's absolutely unbelievable.
Well, and you have to wonder how much the other spurring the other on has to do with that.
Exactly.
You know, the age difference between Quinn and Luke tells you that you knew Luke was watching his older brother, his oldest brother, and saying, I want to be like Quinn, more so than anything else. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in so many ways of when you see greatness in your family room and you see him in the basement and you see him out in the driveway, I want to be like Quinn.
Yeah. And John, just going to put you and everyone there in Eastern Canada on notice. We got another set of brothers coming out of Vancouver here. I know you know of Macklin Celebrini, who's going to be the first pick next year.
Absolutely.
His older brother Aiden's a Canucks draft pick, a defenseman at Boston University, and then they have an 11-year-old brother, RJ, named after his dad Rick, who is he's got a 5-goal game and a 4-goal game this week.
Early this
that's all. 11 years old. So that's the draft of 2030. Boys, I'll be
about that. You watch it.
I'll be on a beach. I'm going to be on a beach. I won't be worried about as much as I think the Celebrini boys are going to be great. I will admire them as a fan.
But I think you should get some clicks right now, John. You could put out John's list, beat Craig to it, and do the 2030 draft class.
There you go.
Just scoop button.
It'll and you only need to put RJ Celebrini at the top, and then you move right on.
Yeah, exactly.
Blake, you've spent too much time in that TSN newsroom, and they said we have to ask a question to get clicks.
What list are we putting out?
Yeah, we need lists.
We're short on
lists here. Hey, maybe you can shed some light on the Hunter Brzustewicz soap opera here. Do you think Hunter Brzustewicz is being punished for leaving the United States national development team by not getting invited to that U.S. preliminary camp? I just got twigged by this by you talking about the Hughes brothers playing in Ontario, as Brzustewicz is now, of course, after leaving the U.S. development program. Do you think he's getting invited if he had stayed with the program?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
They're the Americans had got, they deserve it. They're very proud of what they've done in Plymouth, Michigan. They've done an amazing job. By the way, in so many ways, they copied what we did. We just didn't have a permanent place to do it.
Yeah, they centralized it. Yeah,
they centralized it, and it was the late Jim Johansson that did most of that heavy lifting in order to do it, and including Greg Cronin, who's now the coach in Anaheim, was a big part of that. But I think that there are times where they try to promote the college programs across the United States and turn their noses up at what the Canadian Hockey League has done for junior hockey players and for American-born junior hockey players. All you have to do is look at some of the great Americans that have played junior hockey and ask, did they play in the World Junior Hockey Championships? And if you Google that and you say, well, he didn't play there, you have to think that there has been a frame of mind when it comes to what the program stands for and how they try to propagate it.
They do have OHL players on the team, but it seems more that the fact that he was with the program and then left it is more the issue, right? Like they really feel left at the altar here, and yet it just stands out like a sore thumb. Although there are some other curious decisions, guys that were on the team the last couple of years that all of a sudden aren't on the team. So such is life in the World Juniors, I suppose, where these politics can play a role.
I can't. It's funny. The World Juniors is one of those things that kind of just, it doesn't creep up on you, but here we are in the first week of December and we're already talking about it.
Hey, camp's about to break. Yeah.
Wow. It's, a fascinating time in our game. And I mean, it does make you wonder what Canada is going to be without Connor Bedard and Adam Fantilli, because we know they're not going to get loaned back.
No. Maybe another one or two guys, but not that.
2 words for you: Macklin Celebrini.
yes.
All right. Well, I see. I don't even need to tweet it out or whatever you do anymore. I'll give Sekeres the credit when I'm on the beach in 2030.
There you go. Let's ask you our poll question today. Benning get enough credit here for assembling this core?
Same guy that drafted Jake Virtanen and Jared McCann.
Mm-hmm. And Ole Levy. Mm-hmm. The misses are big. The misses are loud. And we dwell on them because, quite frankly, if those 3 picks hit, and well, McCann did hit, they just traded him. We're probably talking about a different course for the.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think Jared McCann needed to grow, because I like Jared McCann as a player. I think Jared McCann needed to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
And
he was rushed to the NHL, John. He had no business being here that first year.
That's right. And the Jake story is another story for another day, but. I think it's actually far too early to talk about what Jim did. I mean, ask me in March when the team is close to clinching a playoff spot. There are some good draft picks, and I think the best one of all, when you think about it, and you know, it's funny what you remember. I remember standing in the lobby of a hotel in Chicago with Pat Brisson. He introduced me to about 5'6" Quinn Hughes. And said, this guy's going to be drafted. It looks like Vancouver at that point. But I think the Thatcher Demko draft is the smartest one. You know, I think when you look at what they've done and how important goaltending is and how patient they were with Thatcher Demko, all those draft picks that Jim did with his staff, I would look and pinpoint the Demko draft pick as the one that has probably been the most impactful. And that's not knocking Pettersson, that's not knocking Hughes or any of the other guys. But, you know, you can have all those great players and not have good goaltending and not me in the playoffs. Demko has proved to me that he's the real deal, and Jim Benning deserves credit for sticking with it and drafting him at high in the second round.
Well, it's funny because Blake and I were at that draft in Philadelphia, and you know, as the end of the first round was happening, they had that Jared McCann pick. We wondered about Demko then, if I'm not mistaken, because he was the one goaltender or one of a couple of goaltenders who looked like they might be first round picks that year. And then when we had a chance to sleep on it, we're like, wow, I wonder if they get this Demko goalie with the early second round pick. And sure enough, and Quinn Hughes, I will remember it to my last day. He walked into a little conference room at a hotel in Dallas where Blake and I were broadcasting. And we, too, had been sort of, look, it's very possible this guy will be the Canucks pick. He sat down, Blake. We finished the interview. We looked at each other and went, are you kidding me? That's going to be the 7th overall pick. And then he just looked like a boy.
He was a little boy.
Oh, my God.
And the whole exercise here, John, is, hey, Jim Benning clearly wasn't much for team building. Like, he couldn't figure out how to build the whole team. But we said going in when he first got the job that he was a scout. And you know, again, his hits were hits, his misses were misses, but he did at least have enough hits here that they still form the core of what is currently the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, and if you look at Jim Benning's impact, not just in Vancouver, but you look at it for a certain point in Buffalo and certainly in Boston when he was with the Bruins, with Peter Chiarelli, he did a really good job of draft evaluation and understanding what made a solid NHL pro from a draft perspective. There are just some times where, whether it's the Peter principle or other issues, that perhaps great scouts shouldn't be general managers. Right now, you have to point at the recently departed Pierre Dorion in Ottawa, too. Great scout, not a great manager.
Mm-hmm. The salary cap. It's going up to 87.7. How much? First of all, John, I'm so pleased to hear this news specified, like that the commissioner isn't talking around it. And I say that because, like, Blake and I have always sat there and said, I can't believe this league releases the spending limit so late in the year when you have so many moves in season that would be really helped out by knowing what they're allowed to spend.
But again, this one
subsequent
is
season.
this is the residue of the CBA. This is when the Players Association automatically have the elevator click in, and that elevator is 5%. And so you take what the cap is now, you multiply it by 0.05, and that's your improved cap. And I think this really speaks to, in many ways, of the relationship between Marty Walsh at the Players Association and the New York office. I think that there's a very positive relationship going on right now, and both sides are pointed in the right direction. That's not to knock what Don Fear did, because in theory, we did have some level of labor peace for a long period of time. But at the same time, this appears to be a new style relationship. Bill Daly was on our show, 10 days ago, and he talked about this is the best level of cooperation and communication they have had between the Players Association and the league since he's been at the NHL office. So I think that speaks to it, and I think that that's why it's able to be out there this early, that both the Players Association and the league are on the same page.
No work stoppages just for sport? Really? Could we possibly avoid that? That would be something else. Have you heard
remember when we didn't have player strikes?
Yes. Yeah. Well,
we don't have player strikes in this league.
Well, we did once.
We had one. I was part of it. I was working for a hockey club, and we were, and for 10 days, we wondered if we were going to finish the NHL season in 1992. So,
do you get the feeling that some people might be disappointed by this increase? We did hear a number as big as 5 million, and it falls short of that. Have you heard any disappointment from anybody?
No, not yet. Mind you, it's early, and with the fact that the governors' meetings are in Seattle, by the time all the news came up, half the people who were not involved in the meetings were asleep. So, I don't listen. I think I think managers and ownership have been planning for something between $4 and $5 million.
Yeah.
Mind you, lots of teams have already spent it. You know, when you look at
this one here.
Well, and the Maple Leafs with the new Austin Matthews contract, and what the heck's going to happen with the William Nylander contract, and so it's not as if it's going to open up a lot of money for new players. It's probably been going to allow them to sign their veteran players to longer term deals in order to keep their core groups together.
Why are the governors in Seattle? Was West Palm Beach full? Was the Breakers full, John?
No,
brace us out here in the Pacific time zone. December.
I did check the weather. It was a little warmer in Boca.
Yeah, I imagine.
First of all, when Seattle got its team, they were promised one of these things, and I believe this is all part of the hype about the Winter Classic.
Winter Classic, gotcha.
And so this is trying to put a focal point on the Pacific Northwest for the next month when it comes to the National Hockey League and the Seattle-Vegas game on January 1st.
Our first chance to talk to you since the Nikita Zadorov trade. What did you make of it for the Canucks?
Well, I don't think they gave up very much. They got more physical. They obviously got bigger. And they were the only team prepared to take the whole salary. And I think that's the biggest difference. Toronto could not take the whole salary. They were trying to get the Flames to take some, so that's a factor. And I think anybody else was probably hoping that the Flames would retain. And when the Canucks traded Beauvillier, that became a pretty obvious scenario where they could actually take the whole thing. And to me, it makes sense. You can't help but like what it does to the depth of the Canucks defense. He's not Bobby Orr, but he's a good, solid defenseman. He will buy into what's going on there. I do think it's important that there are two other Dan Milstein clients on the roster, and I think it's a win-win. I think that's a positive position that the Canucks are going into as we get into the holiday season.
So the first domino drops there in Calgary, and then they get the bad turn of fortune yesterday. Jacob Markstrom catches a puck in practice. We find out he's broken a finger. He's week to week here. So where does Conroy and the Flames go from here? Because part of the information we were getting earlier in the season was that some of these UFAs have to be dealt with and sorted even, despite of record, which is a little better now than it was earlier.
Here's the interesting thing. First of all, from the goalie perspective, Dustin Wolf's been recalled. Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf will do the job properly. That's a good tandem too. I think if Craig Conroy had his way and he could get rid of Markstrom contract, he'd be happy with Vladar and Wolf being his goaltenders. I think the biggest issue now is once the team pulled those contract offers off the table, particularly the one to Noah Hannafin, this was a signal that the franchise was going to wait and see. Where will they be on January 1st, January 15th? Were they going to be competitive? Ryan Huska has done a really good job of making this team much more competitive in the last 10 games than they were in the first 10 games. Now they're on the cusp of being a playoff team, but ownership is in a really hard line position. Ownership does not want to spend the money at this point. And I think that it's not Craig Conroy as much as it is Murray Edwards making a few of these financial decisions to say, we're going to do it and we're going to be hardline for a while. As well as the Flames have played, and they've been impressive at times, yet disappointing at times, I think that the personality of the team and the success of the team has put them in a bit of a state of confusion of what the team really is. Can they make the playoffs now? How difficult will it be to make the playoffs? Or are they going to have to do the, quote, retool, rebuild scenario in the next 6 months? I don't think they know the answer right now, guys.
Is Chris Tanev going to be wearing a Leaf jersey in the new year or a Canucks jersey, or maybe both? Because maybe he goes one place at the deadline and one place in the summer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's dictated by whether the team is prepared to take a chance on having some of these guys try to get them to the playoffs. And I really don't think they've made that decision yet. Mm-hmm. I shudder to think what the Flames defense will be without Chris Tanev. Look at their record. I don't have it in front of me, but I can tell you right now, without Chris Tanev in the lineup, they are not a very good hockey club. Look at the playoff series. When Chris Tanev doesn't play, they do not perform very well in the playoffs. So I shudder to think what that team would be without Chris Tanev.
We saw it here in Vancouver too, John. It's just when a guy is that all in on one side of the puck and you rely on him so much to play the tough defensive matchups, to penalty kill. Of course, he never takes penalties.
He's a rudder. He's just a rudder for the team.
So I hear what you're saying. This is about the Coyotes and potentially finding a parcel of land here to give yet another arena a go.
And they're a good team,
particularly with the way they're playing right now. And Connor Ingram, who's doing great work in their crease.
I will believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
As you should.
I'm skeptical still. The one thing I have been told is the next time, if there is a next time for the Coyotes in the Phoenix area, it will not require a plebiscite or a vote of any sort. Right. It would be private investment, and they would just do it.
Yeah.
But I'm just a little skeptical still. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and yes, you have every right to be.
Exactly.
Here's what I'll say, John. There used to be a lot of interest in the Coyote saga in this market. And I think the reason is it was high up the list of destinations in the National Hockey League that Canucks fans wanted to go see their team on the road. Of course, a lot of snowbirds down there from Western Canada in the Phoenix area. Since the advent of Vegas and Seattle, you don't hear of that as much because now there's a day trip available to you to see your Canucks. And of course, there's a city with a little bit more to do at night than Arizona.
I could certainly see that. Billy Armstrong, and to Blake's point, has done a marvelous job with the hockey club. Logan Cooley is a bright young light for that club. They have, their goaltending has certainly improved. It's not like a graveyard for contracts anymore. They've turned the corner that way. But I'll tell you what, this ownership group, I don't have much confidence in the fact of what they say and what they do at this point. And I'd love to be proved wrong, because I'd love to see the hockey team stay there and put the arena in the right part of the city. But I think we're now at a show me position rather than
and
I think, and by the way, I think, Matt, I think the commissioner's at that position too.
Wow.
I really do.
They're still carrying Voracek, Weber, and Little, but two of those three are in the final year. The other thing is, I read a headline earlier in the week that, they might actually get active and add to this group. You'll remember several years ago, it was Taylor Hall.
Add playing players?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you remember several years ago, it was Taylor Hall. Blake, 3 seconds, 3/3, 2/4, 2/7 in next year's draft, then 4 seconds, 2/3 the year after, then 3 seconds and 2/3 the year after that. So they have a lot of draft capital to part with if they so choose, those Arizona Coyotes.
And they still have space.
Mm-hmm.
They still have space.
They will always have space.
You think?
Marvelous stuff, sir. Thank you for this. Until next week.
Happy Tuesday, boys.
Finning Canada is your local dealer for cat equipment built to handle work in Western Canada. Visit finning.com for a location nearest you.